Hi everyone, welcome to Tales of Dread. We have 3 stories from Vermont, New York, and Georgia, all on the east coast of the United States. Each of these witnesses says that they have a hard time getting over what they saw or heard. So, if you like what you hear but haven't subscribed yet, please click those buttons so we can spend a lot of time together. July 8, 2015. Let's get to the stories. Rutland, Vermont. During the last summer of my journalism degree, I worked as an intern at a small newspaper. The paper was in a small town in Vermont, but I needed experience and it was hard to get an internship. The first month was the most boring thing ever. I made up stories about apple festivals, parades, and car washes for charity. I knew that a small town wouldn't give me anything very shocking, but I hoped to get at least one good story before I left. 2 hikers went missing in the national forest near town one weekend. It was sad that it took a tragedy for this to happen. It must have happened sometimes, since the area was so wild and undeveloped and many people weren't ready for the conditions. Usually, it was because of sudden bad weather, but it was the middle of July when it happened. In the last few weeks, there had been no storms. Most people thought they had left the trail, gotten very lost, or maybe even fallen. Local groups and some volunteer search parties did the usual things to try to find and save people. I was asked to do a story about the people who organized and helped the volunteer search efforts. I met them in a parking lot near the trail and asked a lot of people questions. It wasn't that interesting, but it was cool to see how it worked, and I was hoping to hear good news firsthand, so I joined them on their next sweep, even though it was way beyond my duty to help with the search. I thought it would give my story a little something extra, and I could use it as a piece for my portfolio. I just wanted to help them find them, too. I went into the woods with 4 people from the area. I didn't understand their whole system of coordinates. So I just followed them and took notes while keeping an eye out for them. I could tell from my own experience that this was going to be hard. The park was huge, and the woods were thick and hard to navigate. There were steep ravines everywhere, so if the hikers had fallen into one, they might not have been found for an hour. We found a clue, and I was so happy to be there. Our group came across a backpack way off the trail. It didn't have anything that could be used to identify it, and it didn't look like it had been there for very long. So it was a safe bet that the couple owned it. Since it was likely that we were close to where they were, the person in charge of the search called for help and got more people to look around the area. We started to worry when we found 2 hiking poles after a while. We hoped it wasn't a really bad injury. The police couldn't get to that area for hours, and no one wanted to wait in case someone was still alive but badly hurt. So we kept going. We looked hard in the area because we thought they might not have gone too far. We did find a few more things, like a water bottle, a sweatshirt, a cell phone, and tufts of fur. That was strange, but there were no people in the area, so after we had looked everywhere, we spread out even more. That's when things started to get strange. That's when we saw the giant footprints. They were barefoot, huge, and had an odd shape for a foot. We watched them for a while until all of a sudden they stopped. They just stopped in the woods and didn't say why. We were very quiet as we looked around the area, knowing that something terrible might have happened and we might not be able to figure out what. Then we all heard a soft scream. We all started calling back, and after a few minutes of searching, we found the hikers. Everyone was surprised to see them curled up in a tree with their arms around a thick branch and looking scared. As we waited for the police, they were thirsty and scared. Some of the volunteers tried to find out what had happened by talking to them. Not much was said, but the man kept muttering something. We finally got it when we asked him to say it slowly and clearly. He was saying it was a dogman. A dogman did it. Over and over. We thought he was out of his mind. But then I thought about the strange footprints and what it would be like when the police and rescue teams found them. The man started to talk a little more hysterically about a scary creature that was half man and half dog that they had seen in the woods. They said it was big and in the shape of a person, but it was all dark because it scared them so much that they dropped everything and ran. But they kept getting the feeling that it was following them from behind. So they climbed a tree in hopes that it wouldn't follow. Fortunately, the man said he saw the animal stop, turn around, and run in the opposite direction. Back at work again. I had to decide what to do. Even though it was dangerous, I chose to write about the whole thing as honestly as I could. I used the man's exact words to describe the scene. I didn't say anything about a dogman, but it was pretty clear what my story was about. It wasn't in the paper. I put it on the internet. The official story was about an attack by an unknown animal, but some people who read it thought it was about me. September 30, 1998, Watkins Glen, New York. I'll never forget that night. It was my first time camping, and my boyfriend had picked a spot where no one would bother us. It was a beautiful place with trees all around. They were trees that looked like they came from fairy tales and old-growth forests. I've never in my life seen so many trees. There must have been hundreds upon hundreds. It was a lovely scene, especially as the sun started to go down. I felt bad that I hadn't paid attention to it when I lived in my hometown. I had seen a lot of sunsets, but I had never really stopped to appreciate them. Before I asked my boyfriend if a lot of people camped in this area, he told me that they all came and went. But because black bears roamed the woods, the place we had picked wasn't used by many people. I decided to throw out that idea. My paranoia had a way of getting the best of me sometimes. Clearly, it was just one of those nights when my boyfriend and I had a nice dinner by the campfire. Neither one of us was a great cook. He brought the drinks, and I brought the food. We roasted hot dogs, which was both delicious and easy. Someone couldn't take it. At the fire, we laughed and had a good time. We made fun of each other for a while, but when we heard a strange howl in the distance, we stopped. I asked him if it was a wolf, and he said it probably was. I didn't like how calm he was about the whole thing, but I didn't want to be scared and ruin the night, so I decided to ignore it. It got dark very quickly. There were a lot of stars up in the sky. As we lay under a clear sky, they sparkled brightly. It was a cool summer night, and we were all tucked into our sleeping bags. All of his gear had been with him for a long time, but mine was all brand new. My sleeping bag was made of stiff fabric. I tried to put it in my washing machine at home, but it was too thick, so I gave up and decided to use it without washing it. I was dressed from head to toe, so I didn't think there was any way I wouldn't be able to sleep. But as the hours went by, I got restless. I looked over at my boyfriend, who was, as usual, sound asleep. The moon was up above her head, giving off a calm light. I had to go to the bathroom pretty soon. I got out of my expensive makeshift bed and walked toward the bathroom. My worry started to get worse again. Again, I felt like there were eyes on my back. I got a shiver up my spine, and then I saw it. Its large head poked out of the brush between a few red maple trees, and the moonlight shone on its amber-colored eyes. At first, I thought it was a wolf because it was so close to the ground and I could just make out a dark muzzle through the green leaves. I kept a close eye on it and never broke our link. I knew that wolves were smart, so I didn't move quickly. As I slowly crouched down and moved out of its line of sight, I was shocked to see that it wasn't even a wolf. I had never seen anything like it before in my life. As it stood up to its full height, I could see that it had broad shoulders, long, strong arms, and a slim, well-built body. But the head of a wild animal made my heart stop in my chest. It had hair all over its body like a wolf, but it was colored like a German shepherd. It had to be at least 7 feet tall. I tried to make sense of what I was looking at, but my brain wouldn't let it in. When it howled, it just didn't make sense. I should have run away right away, but I didn't because I was too scared to move. I might have screamed. I couldn't think of anything anymore. I knew I should have also called my boyfriend, but I couldn't even move my lips. I wondered how something like that could live by itself in the woods. It had to have a partner, which also freaked me out. As soon as I could move again, I slowly looked around and took a small, hesitant step backward. Then, in the woods, a small cottontail ran past the creature and showed its long, pointed teeth. They were not the teeth of a dog at all. I knew that I'd always had dogs. Well, it might have looked like a dog. Nothing about it was calm. I tightened my throat. My brain couldn't decide whether to fight or run away, and neither choice seemed like a good choice. I knew I had no chance of beating the beast, and if I ran, I might not even make it back to my boyfriend. To my great relief, the creature turned and looked at the innocent cottontail, whose big, scared eyes almost doubled in size. When it saw the beast, it ran away to find a safe place. The creature, whatever it was, went after the cottontail. When I got to my boyfriend, I ran the other way. When he saw the look on my face, he knew something was very wrong, so I shook his arm hard. We quickly got our things together and left. I was glad we were able to get away with our lives. My boyfriend said it must have been someone playing a joke on me or something I made up, but it all seemed too real to me. We never went back. God bless. I haven't seen that thing since December 20th, 1998, when I was in Marietta, Georgia. I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life, not because of what that thing did to me, but because of what it could have done and what it might do if it's not caught. It was about 4 days before Christmas, and I was on my way home from work when I saw a baby doll in the window of a local toy store that I thought would be perfect for my daughter. My son wanted new games for his console and a list of action figures and robotic toys as long as your arm. As a child, I could only have dreamed about them. My daughter, on the other hand, was still very young and happy to play with traditional plastic toys, have tea parties with her soft toys, and push around her old teddy bear Max in the little stroller. Last year, we bought her. I had already bought her main presents, which were safe under the tree where both of my kids would pick them up and shake them to try to figure out their size and shape and guess what was inside, but this doll was kind of a trip down memory lane for me. It was made of the same kind of rubber and plastic that most women my age remember having as kids. When it was filled with water, it would wet the bed, and when it moved back and forth, its eyelids would roll open and shut. The thing that really made it stand out, though, was that it had a battery inside and would cry mama in a very convincing way. I knew when I bought it that I would probably take out the batteries after a day or two to make it stop crying, telling my daughter that the baby doesn't cry anymore because she's doing such a good job of taking care of her. I've never had to do that before. I left the store, turned right onto Armont Street, and walked up the hill toward home. When I got to our building, I went through the gate and looked up at the stone steps that lead to our second-floor apartment. We lived in a tower block at the time, and the stairs were on the outside of the building. They had a steel handrail, but they weren't covered, so when it rained or snowed, they were dangerously slippery. I hated going up and down those stairs, especially at night or when I had to carry a bag of groceries. I also didn't like that the stairs were attached to the outside of the tower block. This meant that when you walked towards them, you couldn't see the space under the stairs where they hit the ground. This little nook was closed off on 3 sides and used to have a metal gate to keep people out. However, when we moved in, that rusty old gate was open and didn't work. In fact, my son and his friends had used the small concrete cave to hide or build their den a few times. But the floor smelled like urine, and God only knows what that meant. I had to put an end to that right away. The space was empty, and the only way to get there was by following the orange glow of the streetlight. You knew that space was there, hidden in the shadows, and that anyone could be hiding behind the steps. When I got close to the steps, I made sure no one was there by talking loudly on the phone with my husband, whether he was on the other end or not. I did this to scare away anyone who might be hiding there. That night, anyone, but not anything. When I put the doll in its box, my hands were full. As I got closer to the stairs, I couldn't use my usual phone trick anymore. The doll kept saying "Mama, Mama, Mama" as I got closer. I decided right then that the batteries were going to be taken out as soon as possible. As I climbed the first few steps, I looked down, and what I saw made my legs feel like rubber. I don't know if it was a werewolf, a Sasquatch, or what the hell. I've heard people around here talk about seeing dogmen, and with fur all over its body, it definitely looked like one. The creature came out from under the stairs from the cubby. It had a big nose and was hunched forward. Its ears stood straight up on the top of its head, and it growled and showed its teeth. As it slowly turned the corner and stood up to its full height at the bottom of the stairs, it looked like it was smiling. I could see that it was bigger and taller than any man I'd ever seen. At that point, my legs worked again, and I was able to throw the box. I threw the only weapon I had at it and ran up the stairs faster than I ever had before, but the thing didn't follow me. It tore into the doll and shook it back and forth until it was just a rag in its mouth. I could only think that it thought it was a small mammal. The doll kept yelling "Mama, Mama" until the sound stopped and the mechanism broke. The thing's huge jaws crushed the mechanism. It turned around with the doll still dangling from its mouth and ran toward the line of trees. It went away during the night. It gives me the creeps. To believe that things like that are real. What happened to the doll scares me more. But the thought of it scares me the most. The idea that those cries, those baby cries, might have attracted it in the first place is based on the idea that when it heard crying sounds, it immediately thought of prey.